who aren't here.
Absolutely. So we've started. People are populating the room. Let me get Alderman Harrison.
You you see her?
I'm looking for. She is not populated by her name yet.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. We'll be getting started shortly. Um, Alderman Hairston is where she always is, among the people. And she will be joining us very shortly. She is coming in with all of you. And so as soon as we find her, we will get started and get situated.
Kim, is she coming in with a phone number or just something different?
I think she should be on any minute.
Got her.
Oh, I see her. I'll elevate her.
No, no, I got it.
You got her? Okay.
All right, let me work on
So
everyone.
I was just happy to be a guest. If I could just.
I don't know if you heard us, but I said you are where you always are, among the people.
Right, right. That is fine with me.
Right. So we're letting folks in.
Okay.
In Prentice, it says we've got about 42 attendees. Is that correct?
That's fine. That's fine. Yes, it's about 42.
All right. So you can elevate everybody so we can have a robust conversation.
Oh, absolutely. You all, I got it. You all take
Okay.
it.
So we'll go ahead and get started then. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sophia King, Alderman of the 4th Ward. Happy to be here this evening to talk about just resources that we have to enhance our community, here with my colleague and partner in crime, Alderman Hairston, who was amongst the people, as I was teasing, but it's true. She's always amongst the people and came in with all of you. And we are just excited to be able to talk about some of the ideas that we have been talking about amongst ourselves. And we want to kind of share our vision, which includes all of you. So we are anxious to hear your comments and to kind of educate you on the process, and just really dialogue here with you this evening. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Alderman Leslie Hairston.
Thank you, Sophia. Happy to be here this evening. Happy to see all of you via Zoom. But Sophia and I wanted to, bring everybody in the fold, to make sure that we move forward as one community. So we are joined by a few people tonight that are going to help us navigate this process. I see that we have Tim Jeffries from the Department of Planning and Development, Deputy Commissioner. Uh, Nora Curry, also from the Planning and Development, the SPIF area. Do we have Terrence Johnson? I see Terrence Johnson is here. And then we have the esteemed and longtime Hyde Park resident. You know who it is. It's George Rumsey, who is chair of our SSA number 61. And then we also have our longtime resident and 53rd Street person, Diane Burnham from the Southeast Chicago Commission, executive director. Diane, I saw you on here somewhere, so I know you're here Like to welcome you all. And Sophia, you want to take it away?
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman. So, tonight, just before we share kind of some visioning, we wanted to give you guys some background on, what TIFs are, what SPIFs are. They're acronyms, but, do we actually know what they are and what they do? I was not surprised, but really embraced the idea when I found out that it was started by Harold Washington. He really wanted something that would spur economic development in under-resourced communities. And so I will, with not too much further ado, turn it over to a couple people in a second just to give you some more background and details about that, but we'll actually have you answer questions as well. And so I think we have first up Mr. Tim Jeffries from the Department of Planning and Development to give you an overview. And I think he brought a presentation, a visual presentation as well, just on what TIFs actually are. So take it away, Mr. Jeffries.
All right, there. I had to figure out how to share my screen and unmute. Can people see my screen, the presentation?
Yes, we
All right.
can.
Yes.
So, thanks for the introduction, Alderman, Aldermen, Alderwomen, everybody. My name is Tim Jeffries, the Deputy Commissioner of the Financial Incentives Division in the Department of Planning. That's, among other things, we oversee the use of TIF throughout Chicago. So this is just it's a pretty quick presentation, hopefully give you some just quick hits on what the program is, what the program isn't, and how it's used throughout the city. So at a very high level, just what is TIF? It's discussed a lot, but at the end of the day, it's a funding tool. It's used, it's a mechanism to generate resources that provide funding for economic and other community development improvements. It's a municipal tool. It's administered, the day-to-day administration is done by the Department of Planning and Development, but it is established, the framework is established by the state. The state passed the TIF Act in 1984, and it sort of gives the sandbox. I'll take that back. The TIF Act was passed before 1984. The first TIF was in Chicago, as Alderman King said, under Mayor Harold Washington. So that TIF Act sort of gives us the framework about what we can and cannot do, and how it can and cannot be used. In order to use a TIF, it requires establishing a TIF district, and in order to do that, there's strict requirements that what an area has to demonstrate. That's these blighting factors that are enumerated in the Act. I'll go through them in a second. But if an area is, can demonstrate that there are these blighting factors in place, a TIF district is allowed to be created in that area. Once it's in place, it functions as a diversion where it takes the property taxes that are already generated. It's not a tax increase, but it is a diversion where it takes the taxes that are created just through the normal process of the assessment cycle and the levies, and it diverts them for these uses, the economic and community development uses that I mentioned above. I'll break all these down in a little bit more detail, starting with the blighting factors. This is a term of art or a legal term, I suppose, in the TIF Act. But in order to create a TIF district, the city has to legally prove up that certain factors are present in the area to a degree, a significant enough degree that a TIF district can be created. There's about 13 in total, and these are probably four of the more common ones. Dilapidation and deterioration, those are sort of two sides of the same coin. Dilapidation refers to buildings that are in a state of disrepair. Maybe they need, I'm not talking about like, oh, they could use a coat of paint. It's serious and structural repairs, parapet walls falling in, foundations that are failing. Maybe there was a fire and that's not been repaired in 15, 20 years. There's also deterioration that refers to public infrastructure. So, we've all seen a sidewalk that has had the roots buckled, or the roots of the tree have buckled the sidewalk and created, sort of fundamental critical errors, critical errors in the streets or the alleys or bridges. On the lines below, there's other things that refer to general, these are sort of more area-wide issues, environmental issues, remediation essentially. If there's known contaminants, either from former industrial users, which in Chicago, we have a lot of it, hazardous substances, and rules have changed over time about what is and isn't hazardous for the better, obviously. So stuff that used to be commonplace before, like with former dry cleaners, those are some pretty serious issues now in our time. And underground storage tank for things like old gas tanks. And there's also declining tax values. Basically, is the area not growing? Is the tax base not increasing over time, which is a function of the value assigned to it by the county assessor. So if we can prove up that all those areas, then we're allowed legally to pursue the designation of a TIF district. In Chicago right now, since the inception of the TIF program in 1984, we've designated 184 total. Today we have 132 total, and the difference between those is what's in red around the edges. There's 3 ways a TIF district can end an expiration, meaning that we designate it, and then at the end of its life, 23 years later, it expires. That's the normal life cycle of a TIF district. Termination, this is if the city proactively chooses to terminate a TIF district before that 23-year cycle. We do this. You can see we've had more terminations, 28, than expirations with 18. We do this if the TIF was designated for a specific project and that project's complete and finished and paid out. We do that if the TIF district was created to meet a certain goal, and that goal has either been met or it's clear that that goal is just not going to happen. And that happens occasionally with things like if it was designated for an industrial use, and since then, the direction that the community has taken, the direction that the development has taken in the area is clearly not industrial use in nature. And the last one is repeals. State law requires that activity happen in a TIF district within the first 7 years of designation. And if there is no activity, we're legally required to sunset the TIF district. It's rare that happens, only 6 times in the 40-something years. So once a TIF district is in place, and those 132 TIF districts, they all generate the funds for these projects in the same way. Basically, if you think of a map and then draw a circle in that map. So within that circle, all of the properties generate the amount of in property taxes. Those properties generate $300,000 in property taxes. Once the TIF district is created, as I said earlier, it's a diversion, and as property values go up over time, because I'm here to tell you, unfortunately, the property taxes only really ever go up. Once that happens,
If you're not speaking, if you could mute, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry about that, Tim.
No worries. Yeah, when the TIF district's created, the properties within there are generating $300,000 of property taxes. That is what we call the base. And so over time, as property taxes inevitably go up through just inflation, through new development, which is ideal, it creates property taxes that are above that frozen base. And so you can see in the slide or the bar that's labeled 229, property taxes have gone from 300 to 340. So the 300 will continue to go to the TIF, the taxing bodies, which is the city, the school, the county, the park district, et cetera, as it's always done. That 300,000 will continue to be given to those taxing bodies. The 400,000, however, stays within the TIF district for projects for use within the district and within the district only. That's a critical factor, is that they can't just once the circle is drawn, it's sort of a closed loop. So over time, those property taxes will continue to generate, as you can see it's showing in 2039 and 2042. And so once the in 2043, when the TIF district expires, the property taxes, the TIF will go away, and the new property tax value, which is $365,000, will then return to the taxing bodies as it's always done. So it's a complicated, it's a little bit tricky, I understand, but the sort of red bit, the part that stays within the TIF districts, we call that increment, and so that's where the name tax increment financing comes from. Happy to answer questions and talk about that more later, but at a high level, this is how it generates the funds. So once the funds are there, everyone always loves, you know, how do we spend the money? There are some pretty strict legal limitations on what we can and cannot use TIF revenue on. You can see on the left-hand side, that's the eligible cost. We have public infrastructure and municipal facilities. This is far and away the single largest use of TIF in the city of Chicago, which might be surprising to people. We can also use it for affordable housing projects. I put a asterisk on that, I'll come back to it. We can also use it for rehabbing existing buildings that are already standing, sort of bringing them up to a modern condition, or addressing whatever issues are deficient with them to be suited for contemporary uses. Environmental remediation and site prep, basically getting property ready to be developed, and then also property acquisition. So all of those eligible to use TIF on. What you cannot use TIF on, the big one is new construction. You can't construct a new building using TIF. There's an asterisk next to that one because the caveat is you can use TIF for the construction of new housing, new affordable housing, up to a certain limit. But that's the only time that affordable or that new construction is allowed with TIF. You also can't use things, what they call in sort of the real estate development businesses, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment. It's the things like, like lights, desks. Basically, if you went up to a building and had a couple of friends in a truck, if you could take that with you in an afternoon, that's probably a fixture, furnishing, or a piece of equipment for the building. So TIF funds capital permanent improvements to it. Walls that will remain in place. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. That's another term of art in the industry. MEP. They fund that. So another ineligible is operational expenses. Basically, the cost for a business to keep the lights on. That's just not what TIF is for. We fund these permanent building improvements that will, once they're invested, once the investment is made, they will outlast any single business. If somebody comes in and a business, unfortunately fails, which does happen, the building is still ready for the next person to come in and come down the line. That's how TIF can be used. And then this is the sort of pie chart of how the city has actually used TIF in the last 10 years or so. I'll just skip to the bottom and say 4.8 billion over 10 years. That's how much TIF the city has outlaid in those 10 years. It's obviously a lot, but I will say that if you go through the lines, the public infrastructure, which is number one, that's the largest by a pretty significant margin. If you take that, transit facilities, municipal facilities, which is things like libraries, fire departments, things like that, schools and parks. If you take all of those items together, that accounts for 83.3% of all allocations, and those are fully public uses. I think a lot of people think that economic development, which is number 3 on our list, and at 11% of total allocation, I think people assume that's number 1 and leading, but that's just not the case. TIF is far more likely to be spent on a school in your neighborhood rather than a business. I'll just close by just highlighting a couple recent TIF reforms that have happened over the last few years. I think transparency, we're always trying to make the program more accessible. If you go on the city's website, we have just so much information about TIF, how TIF is used, where TIF is used. We have a very, I think it's a pretty slick portal, like an interactive map. If you Google City of Chicago TIF portal, it'll be the first result that pops up. You can click on it. You can search for any project. It comes with more information than you could possibly want about these projects. But it's also, you can sort of see the places that you go and see how the city's using these funds. And, you know, you'll be surprised. There's like, you had no idea that the street you drive down every day was repaved or paid for with TIF. Surplus in the downtown freeze. You know, there are some TIF districts downtown. The previous administration, this administration, we don't really use TIF in those areas. There's obligations in them, and that we have to pay off, and they're basically, as money comes in, we pay off our obligations and then surplus the money out the door. So last year we returned $300 million to the taxing bodies. Underwriting guidelines, we do have. We've created in the last year plus a pretty robust set of standards around when the city will and will not use TIF. It's just our effort to continually become sort of more professional, transparent, accountable, all the good words you want to hear about your government. And then lastly, the TIF district program is just getting smaller. Since 2011, it's dropped by about 20%. And we're on pace to only have less than 50 by 2026. 50 still sounds like a lot, but we're down from 182, I suppose. So that's all I've got on the TIF overview.
Tim, can you show the map of the TIF district,
The 53rd Street one?
please?
Yes, just give me 1 second.
And I've also got one on my presentation if that's easier
Yeah.
for you.
Well, that's
I got it right here.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
So while he's pulling it up, I hope now you have a little better understanding of what TIFs actually are, and that's one acronym kind of out of the way. And coming up next is one of TIF's children, SPIF, which Ms. Curry is going to explain to you shortly.
Nora, do you have a presentation? Do I stop sharing my screen?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Please, Tim, could you explain the two different districts right there? I think most people may not.
Sure.
Good.
Sure. So in the teal district is the 53rd Street TIF district, which roughly bounds the train tracks, cuts down 53rd Street, picks up. What is this? Is this Nichols Park? I'm a North Sider. I'm sorry. I do my best. But this is Nichols, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Look at me go. I know a little something.
We made that move here.
And then in purple is the 51st and Lake Park TIF district. This was created in 2012. It used to be a part of the 53rd Street TIF district, and it was put into its own for a specific project, which is the Harper Court project. It needed, in order to fund the project, it needed more time than the 53rd Street TIF would have provided, and so it was put into its own district. And it's very small, as you can see. This is one that when the obligation is paid off, just so you can know our own process, we would probably seek to retire this TIF district early, terminate, because it's only one property. There's not much to do there after it expires.
But you said the Harper Court, but it's City Hyde Park.
City Hyde Park, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right.
That's okay. We just revoked your Hyde Park privileges. You had it at Nichols, and now they've been revoked. That's okay.
So fail.
So thank you. And again, now we have Ms. Nora Curry, who will explain what SPIFs are and the acronym and everything. So thank you, Ms. Curry.
There we go. Okay, is my presentation showing?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me today. As the alderman said, my name is Nora Curry. I'm the director of the SPIF program here at the Department of Planning and Development, and SPIF stands for the Small Business Improvement Fund. I'm going to make my my image go away so I don't distract myself. The Small Business Improvement Fund, or SPIF, is funded by the Tax Increment Financing Program. It provides non-competitive grants to small businesses and property owners to make permanent building improvements. As Tim said, because it's funded by the local tax increment financing revenues, it must fund tax increment financing eligible activities. So those permanent things that you can't move in a truck, you can't put in a truck and take away. The Small Business Improvement Fund is approved in 84 districts all over the city, north, south, west side of Chicago. And each month we open 5 to 6 SPIF districts in the city with available funds for 30-day application periods. So who's eligible for SPIF? Properties have to be located in a TIF district where SPIF funds are available, and the SPIF fund is open for application. So if we have to actually approve that SPIF, that TIF area for SPIF funding, the city council actually approves SPIF funding within a particular TIF, and then that area needs to be open for that 30-day funding window. Then folks can submit an application. The people who can submit an application are landlords, either commercial or industrial businesses, business owners, or tenants. We will take applications from current businesses or startup businesses. About 75% of our applicants are existing businesses, 25% are startups. And we are limited to small businesses, but that's a pretty big window. Folks who own the property have to have an $9 million or less of net worth, or if it's a business, they have to have $9 million average sales or less. For an industrial business, they have to have 200 employees or fewer. So how much money are we talking about here? We just had, because of City Council approved just at the end of 2020, a lot of new enhancements to SPIF, including the largest new funding for the program in the program's history. It's actually an old timer. We have over 20 years under our belt in the SPIF program. It was started in 1999. And City Council approved us for over $60 million over the next 3 years, rolling out over time, with the greatest majority of that over this next year, 2021. And a number of improvements, enhancements to the program, one of which was increasing the grant size. So commercial projects are now eligible to up to $150,000 in grants. Multi-tenants can get up to $250,000, with individual tenants getting a maximum of $75,000. Industrial projects can get $250,000. Now, that being said, the average grant we give out is about $61,000. We seem to have a niche there for smaller businesses, but we do see our grants definitely up to the 100. Our grant size used to be $100,000, so we're going to see how many we get requesting $150,000 with this new improvement. We do our grants by reimbursement. Folks can either spend the money and then get reimbursed in either at the end of the project or over phases, up to 3 phases throughout the project. Or with this new enhancement, we've established the opportunity to establish an escrow account to do drawdowns as the project proceeds. One of the great new enhancements we're very excited about is that we have increased the percentage that we can assist businesses with their project costs. The smallest businesses participating in the programs can get a large percentage of their project costs covered by SPIF. Businesses that are as small as $3 million or less, with average sales of $3 million or lower, or a net worth of, if you're a landlord, of $3 million or lower, can get their project costs met up to 90% of project costs, meaning the owner of the business would only need to provide 10% of the project costs, and the city will fund the other 90%. And then, as you can see from the slide, we edge up a little bit more as the business grows, with, if you're over 9% or $9 million, excuse me, you're out of the program. For industrial projects, you're always at 50%. We'll meet you at 50% of project costs. So how does that work? Here is Grace, a business owner who submits an application for a SPIF grant in an open district with a total eligible project cost of $100,000. She's going to make some permanent building improvements to her existing retail shop, and she's a tenant. Grace has been in business for 5 years, and her average gross annual sales are $1.5 million. So her eligible costs break down as follows. Her eligible project costs, as I said, are $100,000. Her gross sales are under $3 million, so she qualifies for that 90% reimbursement. So with $100,000 of project costs, that means the city's responsibility is 90% or $90,000, and her responsibility is $10,000. So try to get that from a bank. That's a pretty good deal for her, and a great deal for the community and for the city, because she's going to make a great improvement to her project. There again is that TIF map that Tim showed you before, the red outline being the TIF boundary there. The area inside is the TIF, and what we refer to as the SPIF rollout. So I mentioned that the SPIF, you can apply for the SPIF during that 30-day open application period. We call those SPIF rollouts. We have one coming up in July 2021. So what are we in now? Oh my goodness, it's almost June. So it's really coming up. If you're a business owner or a landlord of a commercial or industrial business, I imagine here we're talking all commercial businesses, you should be getting ready to apply if you've got a project, because we're going to open these up for applications in a couple months. We have $500,000 available. And then again, we have planned a rollout in a couple of years. $500,000 again will be available. If you ever need to, you can go on our website. We have a brand new SPIF website. It has this information, but also lots of additional information about the program, information about our rules, regulations, your delegate agency. You can check your property, whether it's in the TIF or not, at chicago.gov/SPIF. And how you would look for your property is you can enter it into the search, look up your address, and find the application when the application is open, and importantly, find your local delegate agency and get help. Now we have help. Either you can always call me, and my number is at the end of this, but the program is administered by Summer Corps. They're a nonprofit organization that has a contract with the city to help applicants go through the process of applying for this program. But we also have delegate agencies within the city. Diane Burnham, of course, is one of those folks who will help you through the application process and all the other things that you need to get ready to have your business and your project ready for to use the funding. So what kind of businesses are eligible for SPIF? The answer is most of them. Most small businesses are eligible, but there are a few who are not eligible, and it's easier to talk about those than the ones that are. Residential properties are not eligible, so home-based businesses are a no. Chain and franchise businesses are a no. No McDonald's, no, Barnes and Nobles. No bars and nightclubs, no liquor stores, tobaccos, hotels, motels, payday loan stores, pawn shops. What kind of projects are eligible for SPIF? Permanent improvements, as Tim pointed out, facade improvements and storefront replacements, do a ton of those. Interior renovations, permanent parts of signs, HVAC, ADA requirements, a lot of plumbing, do a lot of bathroom improvements. But we really want to see a lot of improvements to your design as well. The kind of things that are not eligible: new construction, standalone minor repairs, equipment expenses, and things having to do with landscaping, fencing, and anything with interior of residential units. If you have a mixed-use building with retail below and residential above, we can work with you on that. We'll just prorate some of that work. One thing that's a really important part of the work that we do is design excellence. DPD has new neighborhood design guidelines. Any projects receiving $25,000 or more from the SPIF grant must spend at least 10% of their grant on exterior improvements. We do provide a list of architects and construction managers who are pre-approved, and you can work with them. SPIF can reimburse for those expenses. And just an example of the kind of thing that we can work on. This is in Bridgeport, in the 35th Halsted SPIF. You can see on the left the before picture, a project that was pretty well, it wasn't boarded up, but it kind of looks like it was with these teeny windows. Ice Honey came in and really transformed this property on the outside and on the inside with a new ice cream shop. In addition to, the initial application for SPIF is very simple. It's 3 pages. You have to say who you are, what kind of business you are, and estimate what kind of project you're going to do. It's really pretty straightforward. But once you get that application in, we're going to ask you for a lot more. So we like to make sure that you know what's coming next. So basic things, if you're already existing, we're going to need to see your business license. We want to make sure you clear all your debt. Going to need to see your property tax returns to make sure that you qualify for the program, that you are a small business. You're going to have to prove up you're going to just have to disclose some stuff for us. And we'll have to run that background on you. And that's why we really do recommend that you work with your delegate agencies, and they can help you get ready to apply, make sure all that, anything is cleared up, get your forms together, make sure you're all straight with the city in terms of your permits and your licenses, so that you are absolutely ready to go and hit the ground running once your SPIF the SPIF opens up for applications and your application is in and approved. So in general, the SPIF process takes 18 months from the moment you turn in your application to the moment you get your check in your hands. It can take shorter than that. It can take longer than that. It really depends on the applicant. We will respond to the applicant's speed. It really depends how quickly you respond to our request. But you do have certain periods of time. You can get some extensions on that. And here are a couple of examples that we've been able to support throughout the city: Mercado del Pueblo and Humboldt Park, rooted in Hudson, Logan Square, I believe. And then some contact information. At the end, I'll give you my own, which is nora.curry@cityofchicago.org. So we are always happy to help. SPIF at summercore.com. Summercore, as I said, is our program administrator, and it is their job to assist you with any kind of questions you might have about SPIF, but our websites are a great place to start. So thank you.
No, thank you. I think a lot of good information. See a number of businesses in the Hyde Park area who will hopefully take advantage of this. So thank you for sharing that pertinent information. Before we go, and I throw it back to Alderman Hairston, just to kind of give an overview of some of the things that we've actually had fun talking about. So we thought we'd include all of you, because we really had a good time just visioning on, you know, what 53rd could look like. I just wanted to allow a couple of folks to say a couple words if they need to. I know Diane Burnham was mentioned as the executive director for the Southeast Chicago Commission, but also somebody who can help with SPIF. So Diane, if you can just let folks know who you are and how that works really quickly, and then a couple other folks, and then I'll throw it back to my colleague to share some of our visioning. And I smile every time because we sincerely had a good time. And we weren't even having drinks and talking about it. But so Diane, just brief, you know, most people know who you are, but just how they can get in touch with you and how you can help with.
Sure. And so if some of you notice, I've been putting some links in the chat because I'm I love being a resource and being able to share. So again, I'm Diane Burnham, Executive Director of the Southeast Chicago Commission, and we are a neighborhood business development, which often the acronym is NBDC. Wallace Good from the Chamber of Commerce is also on this line, and they are also an NBDC. So both of us in Hyde Park are designated and the surrounding this district to help do one-on-one business consultations. And some of those consultations do incorporate SPIF applications, technical assistance, providing advice, and maybe even connecting you to people that you might want to meet on the city level that can help you with your application or others. So feel free to reach out. I can put in the chat, what I will do is put a link to schedule a virtual business consultation with me if you're interested. So that way you can just reach out to me direct. We do consult on a variety of things. And we are also the service provider of Special Service Area 61, which is otherwise known as Downtown Hyde Park, Chicago, which provides a lot of litter abatement, beautification, business services, and looking at infrastructure and things like that. George Rumsey is also on this call. He is the chair of the SSA 61, and that is really run by businesses for businesses and administered and provided through the SECC. So I think I'm going to leave it there. And if Wallace, if you have anything you'd like to add about services for businesses.
I'll quickly jump in, Alderman. And again, Diane, I think hits it well. A lot of our time is spent helping businesses figure out what they need and where the resources are. So the Chamber partners most definitely with the SECC and the SSA. So I don't need to add any more to repeat the great things Diane just said.
No, she did a great job. But George, if you want to say a few words.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Both of our aldermen, thank you very, very much. Two things I would like to add to the discussion. One is that SPIF is a tremendous program over the years. I've seen many local businesses benefit from it, and I would really strongly encourage anyone who is interested to pursue it with Diane and Wallace and look into the operations of the program, because it's a great opportunity to build your business. The second thing I wanted to say was I think this whole evening is exciting. I really look forward to hearing what Alderman King and Alderman Harrison is going to bring forth. Many of us have been having conversations for months about what we envision for this community, and I am really excited to see that it's taking off and is going to happen. So I just want to state my appreciation for our aldermen and all the work that you're both doing for us. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And if there's somebody who I forgot, I think we covered everyone pretty well. So, but we are going to have an open discussion. Everybody has been elevated to panelists. So when we get to Q&A, folks can just jump in. We'll use the raise your hand function and call on people so that they can ask questions directly of us. But with that, I will turn it back over to Alderman Hairston so she can share with you some of the highlights of our discussions. We had our own visioning and everything, Alderman Hairston, but as you know, we said we got to include everybody else in on the fun. But a lot of it was some of the stuff we came up with was really of your initiation. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
All right, thank you, Sophia. So, I've been with this TIF since pretty much its inception and helped to create the SSA. And we've had growth and development along the 53rd Street corridor over the years. But as anything, you have to keep upgrading and keep moving up. And we found ourselves in a position where we actually had some resources to do something with. And so we started talking and we said, well, what will our priorities be? How can we make this a real community process and involvement? And, we haven't done that since the creation of the TIF or since the creation of the SSA. There have really been no large all-out visioning sessions in a while. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to do this. And, you know, we have such wonderful talent and resources in our community. And I thought that would be great for them to be a part of it. So we said, you know, well, what needs to happen on 53rd Street? Do we need to have, you know, we've already done the street lights, but is there something that we need to add to make it more walkable? Is there something that we need with the businesses to show some type of uniformity? You know, what kinds of things that we can do? I know we have a lot of architects, graphic designers that live in both the 4th and the 5th Ward. And so then it came to, well, maybe we just have a competition. And then it was like, well, what about people that are interested in the parks? Or what about people that are only interested in business and might not want to do all this? So we said, well, you know, we would create different groups to work on those things that people actually wanted to work on. And one of the things that I just thought that I didn't mention, Sophia, that just came to mind, is that we really don't have an ADA plan for our businesses and for 53rd Street. And so that might be something that we could work on together as a community. And that's basically it. And so we put this together and invited you all in, and there's you know, there's no hard and fast rule. We'd like to have a discussion with you, whether you think it's a good idea, whether you think it's a bad idea, and you know, some of the ideas that you all may have as to how we may achieve this.
Yeah, that it's great. I will fill in just a little bit. You covered mostly everything that we talked about. I know we talked about, you know, kind of trying to envision 53rd Street really from what I call the east side to the west side of 53rd, you know, from all the way on the lakefront to Ellis Street. You know, we kind of, you know, don't think about those businesses as much down there, but they need our attention as well. Like you said, the parks, the schools. We had a meeting about Kenwood, so we don't need to really talk about that. You know, we talked about Kimbark Plaza, and just like you said, really maybe coming together, having competitions, you know, for what the park could look like, what the plaza could look like, what the streetscapes could look like, what Harold Washington Park, you know, all of those things. And so that's where we kind of just
Remember when we started talking about Kimbark and the little dead space next to Leona's, and how we on 55th Street have been able to turn that into a socialization place, you know, where we have jazz or quartets or, you know, and just kind of activating it. So that made me think of that.
Right. And then that's when we thought about, or you thought about, I should say, I'm going to give credit where credit's due.
That was us.
How many architects and designers and landscape designers and different things that we have in the community. And maybe we could, you know, have architects, you know, figure out that design for the plaza, as well as for the streetscape, but as well as for the park or the parks, I should say. And so, but then we said, well, let's, you know, we need to let our constituents in. We can't have all the fun. And just to see kind of if we're headed in the right direction, you know, in terms of our visioning and what you'd like to see and how we're approaching that process. And so that brought us to tonight. And we wanted to give you some background, obviously, on TIFs, SPIFs, and what that means. Obviously, since the pandemic, we both agreed that, you know, our businesses need infusion. And so we hope, you know, that they'll take advantage of that, but also in context of what's going on the whole street of 53rd and the continuity there. And let's not forget the infrastructure on Lake Park, you know, the medians. We talked about the bridges as well, but then our commissioner said that they were gonna try and take, so we'll have to have a separate conversation with the commissioner about some of the viaducts and things of that nature. So yeah, so then now that brings us to all of you in terms of questions and answers or comments that you guys have for us and how we can begin this process. And I see a couple hands going up. I see some live. So I see Mr. Newsom. And then I see Miss Paranj. I'm gonna pronounce it Paranjapi. I know that's probably wrong, but if you can use the raise your hand function, that will elevate everybody to our eyes. That'd be helpful. If not, if you can just wave, we'll see you as well. So why don't we start with Mr. Newsom, and then Ms. and I will Paranjapi. I see Miss Moy next. And I see Mr. Gettinger after that.
There's
And
Stacy
then
Robinson, Miss Robinson.
Robinson. And if Prentice or Kim, if you can take names, because I'm gonna forget.
I got you.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with those and then we'll go from there. Mr. Newsom?
Alderman, Ms. Hairston and Ms. King, I can hardly stay in my seat because of the vision you guys has for Hyde Park, 53rd Street, the shopping district. I'm just truly excited. It's about time we brought some heavy attention and brought to the community by the outside, like architects and things like that, that really gives assistance to the merchants and the owners of the area. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the idea of having that competition for Kimball Plaza and those areas, anything to boost the liveliness of the area. And with the input, inflection of all the ideas, it's hard to stay in my seat. I'm so excited. It's time. It's really time. And I'm just going to stop before I just, start to shed a tear.
Well, we appreciate it. That's exactly how we felt. So thank you for that, Mr. Newsom. I'm not going to say your name again. I'm going to allow you to say it.
Thank you, Alderman King, Alderman Hairston. You said my name exactly right, Angela Paranjapi. But appreciate you calling this meeting and allowing us all to have a opportunity to participate. One of the things I was thinking when you were talking about inviting architects and designers to do a competition is that I think one step before that might be to have a community conversation about defining our values as a community. And so in order to give some criteria to the architects and designers to show what's important to us. So for example, you mentioned ADA and accessibility. That's a great criteria to help shape the vision. I think inclusive community space is probably a value that many of us share, though, that might need to come from others as well. Being in the 21st century, hyper-local communities are responsible for environmental stewardship and the sustainability of our local environment. I know one thing being in a city, what we've heard when we've been doing community surveys is that a lot of families feel nature starved. And so preserving nature in our local environment, giving people a way to connect with the natural environment is something that we found our families at HPNC have voiced a need for. So I just think that defining what those values are as a community prior to launching this challenge would be really important to give those parameters. So
no, excellent point. Excellent point. And I am not a planner, or an architect, but I think that's the reason that we called this meeting, was to at least put it out there and then take guidance from you all as to how we move this forward.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And on deck, see, I've already lost my list. So can someone help me out?
That's Miss Moy. Miss Moy.
Moy, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jane Moy, and I think I'm older than all of you people are here. But I've been living in Hyde Park all my life, and it's the greatest place to live. But we are doing restaurants. All we have are restaurants. We have to try to get some new things going.
Variety of businesses.
And another thing is my daughter Joanne has been working on this project right next to Spruce Park. in the alley, we have a burn which has rats in it. And we were trying, she's been trying to get people, we were all going to pay for it ourselves to cement the alley up to the fence.
Yeah.
And it is important because there are kids there and the rats are running around. So I think that's something that has to be addressed.
To use some of this TIF money to address it, it's a gap that runs along the Giordano's, that alley, and Spruce Park. And the rats burrow in there, and now there actually is so many that it actually has burns between this 2-foot gap, and it's like 3 lots long all the way behind to Nando's, behind the dollar store, behind all the way to Nando's and the old T-Mobile store. But nobody wants to claim cleaning it up. They push it on to Streets and Sands. Streets and Sands is not there. The park district says it's not theirs. And then we have weed trees growing and people dumping and pissing and right next to the playground area.
Well, Streets and Sands can do kind of rat abatement. So
We've asked that.
Oh, we've asked that
multiple times.
They've done the rat abatement already.
Okay, so maybe.
So Kimberly Webb from my office is on here. Kim, can you put your contact information in the group chat?
Who?
Kim.
Kimberly Webb.
Yeah. Can you guys see the group chat? I'm not sure if you're.
Yeah, they can because everybody's been elevated to panelist.
Yeah.
And
But we'll call the office again if you want, and you talk to Kim, then.
yes.
I already talked to little Anita about it too, so.
Okay. All right, great.
All right, is there anything else you want?
Nope, that's all, but I'm very excited about this.
And if someone could also check the lights on Cornell, because the lighting, the new lighting they put in from 51st to 55th in Cornell, that the lighting is so dark there. It's not, and it's before the trees grew in. It's very dark, and it's, my brights are on. They have to just go down at night. So if somebody can check the lighting on 51st to 54th in Cornell.
We can do that as well.
Okay. So I don't know who falls under 4th or 5th. All right. I think
we got you. Don't worry about it. So thank you, Miss Moy. Appreciate it. And
Miss Robinson was next, and then after Miss Gruber.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm basically here to see about what the schools will be receiving. We know Kenwood got a nice lump sum, but I'm actually here from Murray Language Academy to see if the schools will be eligible to receive any of the TIF funds.
Yeah, so schools are eligible to receive TIF funds. We haven't heard, well, I think we heard something earlier today from Murray about some interest there. So we will look at those as well and then see what we can do. Well, we had a whole conversation about what we're doing at Kenwood as well. There are some things that we can do elsewhere, but we certainly have to understand kind of in context what those are. But certainly open to schools receiving TIFs.
So what would need to happen? A meeting would need to be set up or for discussion or?
No, I think they're in the process now. Murray is actually putting together a list of things that they would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the person that you most likely heard from earlier today that I emailed Alderman King's office.
Okay.
So
that's the first we've heard of it. So that's the way to begin the process. But certainly schools are eligible for TIF.
Well, actually, I've been in touch with the office for some years now about this.
Okay.
I've emailed and spoken with several of your reps. I've never had direct contact with you. I can pull up those emails, but this has been probably since 2016 that I've been in contact with your office to try to get some type of TIF funding over there for Murray. They have a play lot that every time it rains, it floods. We were interested in, and plus they share with Nichols Park as well. So we were probably interested in probably joining forces with something with the Park District. But what they, Murray is really interested in doing as far as not only having repairs done, but probably some type of turf or sports apparatus or something out there, because it's really a very barren, large piece of land. There's a jungle gym out there, but it's a small jungle gym, and it's really geared towards the kindergartners, maybe up to the first and second graders. You basically have the third graders on up, just out running wild or loose, or nothing to engage in before, after school. It would help,
Yeah. So I apologize. My staff is just bringing it to me today. I'll be honest. I generally deal with the LSC or the principal, and they'll reach out to me, and we're pretty.
I've been at LSC meetings and spoke with some of your reps as well.
Okay. So I believe that, and we will certainly follow back up. I will follow back up with you and with the principal, and then find that out, because I believe in resources for schools.
Yeah, because Kenwood got a big 10 million, and which is I'm a Bronco. My daughter's a Bronco. I'm a Murray alum, and she's a Murray alum as well. But there are other schools in the neighborhood as well.
No, I totally understand that, and like I said, I will be talking to my staff, because I must say they have not forwarded your request, but I will definitely follow back up with them, and then we can start to talk about some of the things that you requested, and we'll see what CPS can come up with, and we'll see if there's something that we can do within the TIF funds as well. So this is why we're having this conversation, to find out if our vision is inclusive of we can't do everything, but we certainly can prioritize things. But schools are literally at the top of my priority. So I apologize for that. And
yeah, we see all of 53rd Street getting beautified and everything, but you come behind those bushes over there in Nichols Park, and it's kind of like forgotten about, especially for the children. I see everything going. I've been here 50 years. I see everything going up for the adults, but not very much as far as far as interaction for children. I look around, there's only one basketball court in this neighborhood, and I think that's off of 47, just as you're getting on the Lakeshore Drive.
Okay. So point noted. Apologize that for whatever reason we haven't been responsive, and you have my word that I will sit down with you, with the principal, and listen to your ideas, and then we can include them in what we're doing for 53rd Street. But thank you.
I
appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
No problem. All right, who do we have next?
I think Gruber.
Hi, thanks so much. So following on Miss Robinson's comments, I'd like to, I'd be happy to help reach out to some of the other schools to see if they could submit a list of needs. I mean, my kids are at Ray, but I'm part of the Hyde Park Kenwood Community Action Council, and I'm sure HPKCC Schools Committee. We'd love to, get more schools involved in this conversation.
So let me respond to this way. Would love to have the list, right? We need to be doing that anyway. But the TIF funds can only be used within the TIF boundaries, right? So that's why it would not include Ray. That's why it would not include Kosmiski. But we still need that list.
Right.
We still need that list because other than, and I want to remind everybody that all of us that pay taxes, right? There's and property taxes on our bill. There's something says that what goes to the Park District and what goes to CPS, and so it doesn't absolve them from their responsibility of taking care of our children in our schools, in our community. This should be, icing on the cake, but it does not absolve them of their responsibility to making sure that we have healthy, happy schools in our neighborhoods.
Understood. The point I wanted to make as a suggestion, really, that if some small business funds could go to organizations that offer programs for kids. I'm thinking of like after school activities or dance activities or Hyde Park Arts Center. If, you know, we could use some of those funds to offer scholarships, or for example, Ray supports the PTO in the past has supported the Chicago Children's Choir so that kids can participate in that without a fee at the school. But if we could think about something like that in a more overarching way for the community, so that if you're in Hyde Park, you could count on the option. You could also do Chicago Children's Choir, or, you know, you could take advantage of some of these excellent programmatic offerings we have right here in our community. I think that would be a great way to think about some of these funds.
Tim, do you want to respond?
Sure. What you said sounds great. I mean, that should be happening. Unfortunately, it's not a TIF eligible cost. You know, I think one of the big takeaways that everyone should have is that TIF is for permanent capital improvements, and unfortunately, that's really bricks and mortar. And so, if there's proposals to build those spaces where those things happen, that's like a sandbox that TIF can play in. But the actual cost to, you know, get those programs running, staff them, have the, you know, reoccurring operational expenses, you know, for better or worse, that's just that's not how we can use TIF. That's just it's not what the law says.
All right, I think we have up next Aaron Gettinger.
Yep.
Thanks for your time, Alderman. I appreciate it. I had two questions. One about the viaducts. CDOT told me earlier this month that they weren't going to pay for it this time around. They don't look to be in very good condition, and you said commissioners had it on their docket. Was that the Cook County commissioners that are looking at paying for renovations on the metro tracks this time? I just wanted to see so I could ask whatever commission you guys were talking about as far as that was concerned.
Yeah, it was, I spoke with Commissioner Biaggi about it, but I think she said it in a brief that we had as well. And who did you speak with?
Claffey, the CDOT spokesperson.
Okay. So that
I got the list of the 8 repaving things, because they said paving and bridge work, and I checked to see, because we know they're not in good shape, to see if they were going to be working on any in our neighborhood, and they said no, not any of the ones in Hyde Park. So,
well, some of that funding comes and from the Canadian Railroad, should be coming from the Canadian Railroad, because they own, excuse me, those tracks. They have not been good neighbors in the past. And so that continues to be a struggle to get them to maintain that which they own. And so maybe this administration, meaning the President Biden, will have a different relationship, but they have always been very difficult to deal with. But different agencies own different parts of the tracks.
okay, I just wanted to see if you guys knew anything that I didn't. Obviously, we'll keep watching it. The second part I wanted to ask about was the fact that TIF money has to be spent in the TIF footprint. You know, you've said that you wanted to invest in the area west of Woodlawn. There's been talk about spending in Harold Washington Park and that kind of thing. None of those areas are in the TIF footprint. I mean, I think that, you know, everyone's interested in kind of investment in Hyde Park more broadly in this kind of thing too. But when you say those things, what specifically are you talking about? Because you can't use the TIF dollars in those areas.
We're talking about, so we understand that, but we're talking about kind of leveraging those resources that we can use in the TIF, and then, you know, asking the Park District, CDOT, to, see our vision and using our collective purchase to advocate for those other resources. So while Nichols Park may sit in the TIF and Harold Washington Park doesn't, we could certainly ask for money for the TIF for Nichols, and then say, hey, we also need in our vision some money for Harold Washington, and collectively do that. We also have menu dollars and other resources. So that's what we plan to do. But you're right.
And Aaron, as I think I've told you before, or when we were first talking about this, before we actually confirmed what the actual boundaries were, one of the things that the tennis players in Harold Washington Park have wanted for years has been some kind of cover, right? A place where they can seat, or where they can be seated, while they're not playing tennis, where they can get out of the sun. And I think that's something that the park district should be doing. And so, what they're not having to lay out for the improvements that we are making because of the increments in the TIF district, they should be able to invest in the parks, or improvements on the streetscape. You've got the NOF funds or grants. So there are a variety of tools that the city of Chicago has and that we can utilize, Alderman King and myself, to help these businesses.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Who's next? No more questions from a Hyde Park crowd?
I think we have one more for Miss Moy, and then we can close it out. Miss Moy?
Unless she's still.
Hi, this is Joanne. So is the TIF money going to be, it can be spent on the west side of the tracks? Isn't that the Metro side of, because I think Canadian National is on the east side of the tracks. That's their responsibility, right? And then the west side is supposed to be like taken care of by Metro.
We have not reached any agreement. That was what we wanted to bring people together for, just to kind of float this idea. We will have to come back, and as one of the constituents mentioned, put together a plan. So this was just the initial meeting to see if this idea is viable. Is it something that the community would like to embark on? And then I guess Alderman King and myself will get together and try to come up with a semi-calendar, and maybe talk with Diane and George and Wallace to see what kind of schedule we can do.
The landscaping maintenance or something along the west side of the tracks.
Well, we don't know that yet. We don't know yet. This was just the idea that we wanted to share with you guys.
And then my other concern is about Nichols Park. The bushes that face Target, the lilac bushes that face along there on 53rd Street. They were initially a good idea, but I think it sort of prevents people wanting to go in the park because it creates a wall of privacy, but also creates a wall of, is you're so hidden, illegal things go on behind the wall, and also garbage, and you just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, homeless people hanging out behind there, and it doesn't feel safe. That maybe we can think of taking the bushes out and re-landscaping that to make it more open and friendly instead of that large lilac hedge that's going on.
So we've heard that comment more than once, and that's something that we should talk about when we talk about Nichols Park and that focus group that will come together to re-envision that as well. So that point is well taken. We've talked about trying to open it up. I agree, the lilac bushes are a gem maybe they could be repositioned and used again so we can open up, but that's a discussion we'll have. And, somebody will bring a vision and we'll look at different ones and figure out what's best for the community. But I can appreciate that, as well as I can the initial thought about those bushes as well.
Right. Okay. That's all I need. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple more hands. I don't know which ones came up first. I see Mr. White and Mr. Bennert, I believe. Mr. White, you want to go first?
Hi, thanks for doing this. Appreciate the opportunity. I live in the neighborhood, and I'm actually part of the Nichols Park Advisory Council. And I would like to strenuously object to the previous commentary about the utility of having a green separation between 53rd Street and the park. I would suggest for those guys that feel that they have a problem with parts of the interaction between the park and 53rd Street to join the PEC. That's the best way to get involved in the park. We're having a massive cleanup this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I think if people got more involved in the park, they'd understand the incredible role of having a green wall instead of an iron wall. If you want to see what it looks like the other way, go to Wicker Park and look at how they separate themselves from Damon. It's just a big iron wall that does that, and it's great to have a wall that produces drinks CO2 and puts out oxygen for us, and it also is keeps the park very quiet on the inside. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think all these things have to be discussed with the entire community. The comments earlier about having to have an interaction with neighborhood and nature are extremely important, and Nichols Park has always provided that.
Yeah.
We look forward to the discussions.
And we look forward to the discussions too. And I don't think it's and or, so I think green is important. I think safety is important. And so, we'll be part of the conversation. And I agree, people, do need to get involved. But I think people are involved in different ways in the community and certainly can have input if they're involved in something else and not necessarily involved here. So we have to be open to discussion. But like I said, I think those focus groups sound like they'll be really interesting. And that's why I think it'll be good to have different visions and then to talk about those visions and what they will be. And perhaps there'll be, a vision that will allow the green space and allow the safety that we need at the same time. So I look forward to those. We'll take one more question, and we were planning on ending right at 7:30. And so we'll take your last question, Mr. Bennert, and then try and wrap things up.
Thank you, and thanks for having this meeting. These plans sound wonderful. I just had a very, very particular concern I wanted to articulate about the intersection. You were talking about traffic lights. The intersection of Woodlawn and 53rd is still very dangerous for pedestrians. And I really think some kind of walk sign there would be beneficial. It's hard for pedestrians to just navigate that intersection. A lot of students living there with AirPods, oblivious to the world. So that's just my one very particular suggestion.
So actually, that's one that Alderman King and myself share.
Okay.
And we don't need to utilize TIF funds for that. We could use our menu money to make improvements in that intersection. And I mean, if you will agree, maybe that's something that we look at, with a small group. What do we want to do with that intersection right there? How will it make it easier? Do we need to have chirps put in for those that are visually impaired? If that is something that we could do, I would like for us to do that now. And that's, because I have them on 55th and Lake Park. And they're helpful getting people to navigate. So that doesn't have to be a TIF item. That is an aldermanic item.
Yeah,
Nora-
however it gets done, right.
Right. So more short term. So that's something literally we can talk about now for this year perhaps, because it has safety implications that we want to take care. But certainly we'll look at it in the context of and when I say long term, you know, that's another vision that we didn't have. We don't want this to be like a 3-year visioning process. You know, we really want to start implementing some of these things. So we want to, you know, do, you know, maybe perhaps a few months and then, you know, decide on where we're going from there. So just to put it in context, we don't envision this taking years to get done. You know, a
We
lot
actually don't have years.
talk about, right? So, but what you were talking about, Mr. Bennett, we could do, you know, in, you know, a few weeks' time, probably try and get something down and implemented and get CDOT into constructed. So, well, thank you. It is right at 7:30. We really appreciate just the beginning of the dialogue. And the excitement around this. And then we will follow up with kind of a process that we can put together to really begin to enhance our communities, our community, if you will. So thank you again, Alderman Hairston. Any parting words?
No, we may be reaching out to some of you to help guide us as we, you know, put these meetings together. So be looking out for us. We do need to do this swiftly, I think. You know, because it's like use it or lose it. And we don't want to lose it because we've got stuff that we need to get done in the community. So I want to thank you all this evening. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Alderman. It's been very good, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.